Welcome to a massive overview on the trouble with education today. And I think it's relevant because this is the root of the problem. These teachers, these spoiled brat, unionized teachers who think they're irreplaceable and subsequently irrevocably wonderful.
Fewer than half of American teachers are covered by unions at 49%. That percentage has steadily declined from what was just 64% back in the 80s. There are 5 states where teacher unions are illegal. Now, I would argue that test scores are an unfair reflection of teacher efficacy, but in case you believe they are, as most conservatives do, it's worth noting that the students in those 5 states without teachers unions routinely perform among the worst in the country on their composite scores of the ACT and SAT. My point is that being in a teacher's union doesn't make someone a good or bad teacher. I'm from a state with a strong teacher union, and I've worked in 2 of those states that don't have them. I can confirm, as can a trip to any of these states and an evaluation of the educators therein, the common sense suspicion that wherever you go, you'll find good and bad teachers, without or with a union. School districts don't need unions to have policies that make it difficult to fire teachers for incompetence. In most districts, teachers first have to go through an improvement plan to have a chance to improve before they get fired. I'll talk about why that's important and makes sense later. I've also never signed anything longer than a 1-year contract, meaning they could simply not hire me at the end of the year. No questions asked. So it's not as simple as unions being an all-encompassing problem or solution for either side.
Has made for some neo-Marxist brats who keep telling us how much the Western world sucks, how much white people sucks, how much Canada, America, and Britain suck, and how we're responsible for this whole horrible thing called white supremacy. White supremacy here in the real world never comes up, but in school, it's the backbone of all education.
Who told you American teachers are preaching a narrative of white supremacy? You just claimed with a straight face that white supremacy is the backbone of all education. I will concede that absurd point and pretty much any point you make in this video if you can find a single strand of a single standard from any state's curriculum in any grade level on any subject that substantiates your claim. I already know you can't do it because it doesn't exist. So how can you claim that it's the background or the backbone of all education when it isn't found in the curriculum taught in any state or in the Common Core? That would be a good start since most states use that. It really seems that you, like almost everyone outside of education, have never read through any state curriculum for any subject or any grade level, and you're just making this shit up.
In 2005, Larry Summers was fired for indicating that it's possible that maybe women don't have a predilection for STEM, and it started snowballing after that with trigger warnings and microaggressions and all this bullshit. Now we have Jordan, like the better the professor is, the more they're pilloried. We have Jordan Peterson on the chopping block for refusing to use dumb pronouns, or Janice Fiamengo is also going through all these what do you call them, tribunals, where she ends up having to pay a fine or something because she's violated the Marxist orthodoxy.
So now you're talking about college education. It turns out you'll be jumping all over the place and lumping pretty much anything into K-12 public and private under the general umbrella of schools in this video. That's fine. It's just really going to make it hard for you to be consistent or to prove any kind of common theme across all of those differences. Everything I said about curricula still applies. Now, there's a far greater variety of college courses of study available, but you didn't just claim that some college courses exist that talk about white supremacy. You said it's the backbone of all education. Feel free to cite that from any of the general studies programs from any state university in the entire country. Find it in an actual curriculum, because citing a few professors whose jobs were lost or challenged due to decisions by individual school boards at individual colleges does not support your claim. Also, none of those 3 professors were fired over the issue you brought up. You brought up white supremacy and then cited professors reprimanded for a feminist issue, a gender identity issue, and then for what you call the violation of the Marxist orthodoxy without any specification. Come on, man, there are plenty of legitimate criticisms to make about American education, and you're not hitting any of them so far.
I think it's actually good news in a way, because the biggest problem with having kids, the only real cost was always college. Now that they've made college totally and utterly useless, then it's cheap to have kids. Don't send your kids to school.
It's true that there are options out there to become gainfully employed without a 4-year university degree. However, many jobs required to maintain our standard of living in society, and many jobs that children may want, still do require a college education. It also costs an average of about $14,000 per year to raise a child from ages 0 to 17, so no, it's not cheap to have kids, even if they don't go to college.
Just to avoid the allegation of this being anecdotal evidence, I'm going to give you 20 examples of Western education, mostly American here. I'd say it's 95% American. 20 examples of the insanity that's going on in school, the insane leftist brainwashing. And the reason I got this list together, I started telling my viewers to send me screen grabs of their classrooms, of their bulletin boards, of their classes, and put education in the subject, and I'll compile them all. So here's my 20 favorite ones.
Anecdotal evidence from you and 20 alleged students, 19 of whom by your estimation are in a country with 5.2 million teachers in K-12 alone, is still anecdotal evidence. 19 students out of the entire United States taking literal snapshots and video snippets out of context from what they don't like about their schools doesn't exactly constitute an objective study. Let's hear you out anyway, though.
But let's start with this one that doesn't have a link. A friend of mine in the burbs, she has to send her kid for an ADHD evaluation, and this is becoming very popular now with kids. They get bad marks for being rambunctious. One of the reasons young girls now have better grades than young boys is they're being academically penalized for being boys, for bouncing off the walls, as boys are wont to do. So they go to this ADHD psychiatrist, and if he can diagnose them with ADHD, they won't be penalized. So they'll go on Ritalin or something. So we have these kids avoiding losing marks by taking medication, and they can just sit in class like zombies.
I love that you opened by saying you compiled this list to avoid the accusation of anecdotal evidence. Then the very first item on the list is a story about your friend. Anyway, I'm inclined to agree that there's too much sitting down in school, especially at the elementary level. Children naturally learn through play, and if you want to challenge them sitting down too much, I direct you to the conservative and liberal politicians who think that student scores on tests are the best metric for teacher quality and school accreditation. It forces school policies to limit the amount of time for play, creative arts, and exercise, and to overfocus on preparation for standardized tests, especially in low-income areas where many students come into the classroom behind their expected starting points. That would be a valid complaint. The fact that a school somewhere requires students to be tested by medical professionals for a learning disability is not. While I'm also not a fan of students being drugged up at a young age, it's also worth noting that Ritalin doesn't affect everyone the same way. Stimulants like caffeine or Ritalin tend to calm down someone with ADHD. If you give it to a child without that condition, it makes them more hyper.
Here's a clip from a teacher at a rally in Berkeley. After he does his speech, which you can find online, the guy, the sort of MC, says something very profound. Have we got that clip? Yeah, this guy in the hat.
Remember that no matter whether you're going in to teach, or you're going up to Sproul Plaza or Justin Herman Plaza, or you're going to Fruitvale later, education is political work.
Is that intense or what? No. Education is the opposite of political work.
I actually agree with your sentiment here, just not your conclusion. Teaching should be an engaging presentation of objective knowledge and the facilitation of instructing essential and creative skills. It's not the place to push your political agenda. However, a single professor claiming that education is political work is not evidence that schools suck. This is like pointing to one video of a Trump supporter screaming at legal immigrants and claiming that's why the entire Republican Party sucks.
Here's some footage a kid sent me of one of his teachers recruiting for BAMN. BAMN is, by any means necessary, a very radical left-wing group that's up there with Antifa and BLM, and it's run by Yvette Falarka, who is also a teacher. Always teachers involved in this stuff, because if we lose this neo-Marxism in America, they're out of a job. But check out this radical classroom.
You claim that teachers are out of a job if we lose this radical neo-Marxism. Care to explain how the hell you came to that conclusion? I seriously can't even address that claim because it comes out of nowhere without any explanation for the grounds on which you're building it. The clip itself is a bit long-winded, and I'll link the BAMN site below with other relevant links since this video didn't bother to do so. Again, I'm on board with your sentiment that BAMN is an organization that's too politically biased to push in schools, and a teacher shouldn't be encouraging it during class. That's probably why it's much more commonly found in colleges where political organizations of any kind can be found. This, again, is one teacher pushing his personal politics where they don't belong, but that's not systemic. I find it irreconcilable that you have no problem giving the police the benefit of the doubt when one of them does what he or she shouldn't do, but you're prepared to let this teacher recruiting for a political organization represent all schools everywhere? And where's your outcry for religious groups that seep into public schools with far more frequency and success, like the Fellowship of Christian Athletes or conservative clubs? Are you sure that this issue isn't more based on politics than objectivity?
Number 4, my 4th example. So this girl is doing chalk drawings on the ground, which kind of embarrasses me, by the way, that that's considered radical now. I want to write something that's pro-life with chalk on my school's ground, which the rain can wash away in a matter of seconds. But that's now revolutionary. So this teacher comes up to her and he says, you can't do that here. Free speech is about being in the free speech area, the designated location for free speech, nowhere else. It has to, isn't that the very definition of free speech, that you're free to do it anywhere? No, you have to do it in the zone. It's literally called the free speech zone. So she goes, no, I have permission to be here, I'm doing it. He then gets his students to erase her chalk with their own feet. And then when she says, stop doing that, I'm exercising my free speech, he goes, okay, I'm exercising my free speech by rubbing it out with.
You describe the clip well and just repeat your same commentary, so I'll respond here. Schools, just like workplaces, are professional institutions. While any child living within its district is free to enroll in a public school, it's not a public place in the same way that a public park or a bus stop is. It's the same reason schools can have dress codes and prevent you from bringing drugs, alcohol, or guns that you legally own onto their grounds. You can't just go into a pet store and start exercising your free speech by writing on their walls with chalk that you feel that they should set all the animals free. The fact that the chalk can easily be washed away does not change that. The First Amendment doesn't enable anyone in the United States to say or write anything anywhere, even if what's being said or written does align with you politically. The fact that this school created a designated free speech area where people could go to exercise those rights means this student was particularly asinine for refusing to use it, and it makes it particularly asinine for you to defend the act.
The high school was talking about supremacism. You'll see there's so many of these that have supremacism in them. Do you have that one, John? Uh-oh, pressure's on. I gave John, here we go. So this is a class, it's a class about advertising. They're learning about advertising. I have no idea what this has to do with advertising, but you must learn the word supremacist. I don't know why it's cut into 2 lines there. And of course, a supremacist is Donald Trump. He's an advocate for the supremacy of a particular group. Yeah, Americans. But go down. So racism is prejudice, discrimination, blah, blah, blah. And every time this teacher defines one of these isms, which shows you the pronunciation right below it, just in case, you'll note they're having some fun there in PowerPoint with fonts and tooling around, splitting words in half. This is how these teachers swallow up their day. But she includes anti-Trump memes in this PowerPoint. The moment when you are at a Trump rally and you define whether they're okay by their skin tone. You know those things that people do at Trump rallies all the time. Hello, I am from Africa and I am here to support Trump. No, bye-bye, Barack Obama. You're too dark to be at this rally. We have a tone chart. Keep going down. Every single one of these, yeah.
I have to stop you there because you go really far off topic and lose focus on what your video is supposed to be doing, which is using all these examples to prove why schools suck. So in this clip, you showed what looked like 3 presentations, websites, PowerPoints, or something like that, that defined supremacy. You have absolutely no context for what they even are. You're even blabbering as if a teacher made and used these presentations, which all define the same thing, to teach them, their students, that Trump is a supremacist and that white supremacy is rampant in America. Again, I challenge you to show me the curriculum standard that requires that to be taught. I also ask you to consider Occam's razor. Ask yourself, is it more likely that a teacher did that, particularly making 3 different presentations that say pretty much the same thing or define the same term? Or could it be that supremacist is one of the vocabulary words students are expected to learn, maybe for social studies class, and that these 3 presentations were all done by different students or student groups? It looks a lot like student work done for a vocabulary assignment to me, but I guess that wouldn't give you the opportunity to lambaste some teacher for a presentation you assume was done based on a lesson plan you've never seen.
A professor discussing when is it okay to kill whites on a radio interview. Now, here's my take on these kind of guys. I think they're Sambos, they're Uncle Toms. You see, white liberals, they want to have a black friend who's a revolutionary. They don't want a guy like in a sweater vest who likes country music. That's not a good enough black friend. You want a black revolutionary. So this black professor talks about killing whites. You know, all his white friends go, I've got like one of the most hardcore black friends ever. He's like, I want to kill white people. Like, he doesn't want to kill me, obviously. He says, you get a pass because I'm kind of down with the brown.
I really hate it when the right and left do this. Stop claiming that you know what your opposition thinks and really means or does in secrecy when it's not what they actually say or publicly do. That's the very foundation of a straw man. Just argue the points that someone actually makes, or else you're just rambling on about nothing and giving your opposition and fence sitters ample reason to not take you seriously. On that note, the people on your own side of the issue shouldn't take you seriously when you do that shit either, and you deserve to be called out for it.
And I like this example not because it's particularly egregious, murdering white people. I just like it because it shows the academic rhetoric and how they have their own language that just goes on and on and on. And it even has its own sort of iambic pentameter to it.
Also, you don't seem to understand what the word pentameter means. Just because iambs exist in a sentence doesn't mean that it's using pentameter. Iambic pentameter uses 5 iambs per line. That's what penta means. 5.
Now, 2 weeks ago, Jamie Foxx made a joke about how great it was for him to be able to kill all the white people in his new movie. And I saw it, and he's right. Practically every white person in that movie dies a very violent and well-deserved death for their participation in the enslavement of African-descended people. But the problem I have with that statement and it using the context of Django is that it's a fantasy where the deaths of white people are really just an entertaining spectacle. It's something that didn't really happen.
Okay, that's enough.
Not like...
Did you catch that? His problem with the movie Django Unchained is that the whites who were killed were fictional. They should be real people.
No, Gavin, that's not what he said at all. You just paraphrased him by talking about what his problem with the film was, but his problem wasn't with the film. It was about the statement that Jamie Foxx made in the context of that movie. Do you not realize that a movie and something an actor says about working on the movie are different things? You also cut him off before he could explain what he meant when he pointed out that Django is fictional. He could have taken that point to several directions. For example, he might have said that a fictional film in modern times about killing slave owners in those times doesn't really do anything outside of catharsis for modern black Americans. That would have been a reasonable statement to make. He also may have made horrible points next, but we don't know because you cut him off in your hurry to deliberately misinterpret what he clearly said in the clip that you just played.
This is just a random one this guy sent in. And sure, some of these could be lies, but the reason I chose 20 is because there's authority in numbers, and I'm hoping we get away from anecdotal evidence into you noticing a pattern here.
You then spend a minute reading a random email from someone who claimed his girlfriend was a college student whose professor made her do literal sweatshop work. There's no reference to what college it is, what course is being taken, or the name of the professor. It's just a random story someone sent you with no evidence or even enough specifics for you to fact check it. That's worse than you giving us anecdotal evidence. That's you giving us third-hand, uncited, unspecific anecdotal evidence. And no, there is not authority in numbers in this case. 100 completely random, uncited, unverifiable stories are just as valuable as one of them. And this bullshit is one of the 20 best examples you could find to levy criticism against education? Come on, Gavin. My high school students seriously could do a better job than this.
Here is an assistant principal, also incredibly gay, who is mad at pro-lifers who are standing on a street corner near a school and talking about what they call a holocaust of babies.
what's happening.
No, I wish to protect my students from unsightly
But
things that they don't need to see.
Sir,
my students,
this is what
we
they
do not
do.
have a single pregnancy in my school. I've been here for 5 years.
How do you know?
I can't tell you if you're doing
How does he know this?
Abortion, and you want to call me a liar while you're standing out here harassing teenagers.
I'm not harassing
You can go
anyone.
get a freaking life.
These children are being
You can go get a friggin' life. Have you noticed he's doing the white equivalent of that? You need to go get a life. I'm smarter than you. You're stupid. Go home.
They are cells. You're at a science-based school. Those are cells.
So you need to
You're at a
turn to
science
Jesus
base.
Christ.
He's pointing to a fetus going, those are cells.
Listen here, son. All right? I'm as gay as the day is long and twice as sunny. I don't give a fuck what you think Jesus tells me and what I should and should not be doing.
Whoa. Girl, you just got
Teacher wants
served.
to keep-
All right, that's enough. But have you noticed his tone, too, of protect our students? It's this sort of let the state control everything mentality that's permeating American culture to the point now where every time there's a rally and someone falls or someone's shouting, police! Police! We need to get the police involved. Not if someone was running a train on you at spring break. That's cool. That's fine. But if there's any kind of altercation, police! What's going on, police? It's really unhealthy. When I was a kid, if you had beef, you settled it at 320 at the abandoned baseball diamond down the block. Settled. We don't need the state involved. I don't need my teachers protecting me from the state. I don't need them blocking me from signs.
I find it bizarre that you interpret what the principal did here as censorship. All he did was basically told him, get out of here, you're wrong, and fuck off. He also turned his back on them. That isn't censorship or stopping students from receiving information. If someone on the far left stood just outside of school grounds and started warning all the black children that the police are out to get them, showing them videos of police brutality against black people and warning them to distrust the police, and the principal came out and told that group that they were full of shit and to fuck off, would that be censorship of the information or just common sense? Kids don't need pictures of aborted fetuses or emotional-based religious rhetoric shoved in their faces. But even so, this principal didn't physically stop the protesters, and in the clip that you showed, he didn't call the police or threaten to call the police. So what the hell was that 35-second rant you just went on about people calling the police every time there's a protest or rally they don't like? Nobody called or threatened to call the police in this clip. He just told them that they're wrong and turned his back.
Principal discovered to be a communist. And you have to understand, these unions control information so well that when you see an allegation like a principal is accused of being a communist rattling a Brooklyn school, she's way more communist than you think. If they get any allegation, these are people, as James O'Keefe discovered, have to say the N-word and basically rape a student before they can get fired.
Like I said at the beginning, it can be quite a process to fire a teacher who's incompetent, but it's not hard at all to just not rehire that teacher at the end of the contract. All of that is dependent on the language of the contracts, of course, which are agreed on by local politicians, school boards, and unions as well. But it's not just unions who draw these things up. There are also good reasons that it's common practice to not just fire a teacher on a whim. Replacing him or her with someone better and qualified is difficult. There's a lot of training investment that goes into hiring a teacher, and the job is very difficult to learn and perform masterfully, even for veteran teachers, let alone someone new to the job or working in a new school. If every time a teacher lacked competency, they were fired rather than supported, every teacher would be fired in his or her first semester, including those of public, charter, and private schools. Don't take my word for it, though. Go find any teacher in the entire country and ask any number of them how good they were at their jobs in their first year of teaching. Opportunities for hiring quality teachers are mostly in the summer between jobs, as the majority of candidates available mid-year are either fresh out of college, like I was when I started mid-year, or they have experience but they were fired by their last school. It's not like the corporate world where people are let go and hired regularly throughout the year and someone better is always clamoring for the job. Of course, there would probably be a much larger pool of quality educational professionals if the average teacher's salary weren't paltry compared to the average salary of other jobs in the private sector that require the same amount of education. As for your example itself, it's absurd. You're claiming that because one principal somewhere was accused of being a communist, that she was discovered as being one. Those aren't the same things. From that, you phrased your point as, they are communists. I guess if one person who mocks homosexuals is even accused of being a homosexual, then all of you who mock homosexuals must actually be gay, right? Or would that be a fucking stupid conclusion to draw?
So, National Education Conference to blame white teachers and students for school woes. Now, I don't like reading the editorial to you about this because it's obviously the writer's angle and his name is Zombie. But let's go down to the actual information that was disseminated to these students. White privilege, white responsibility, deepening our commitment as white allies in the struggle for racial equality in schools. To achieve racial equality in schools, all educators must be able to identify and communicate where their own personal whiteness plays out in the classroom. Now, I think this kind of shit is bad for black people, because when you tell black kids that they're living in a racist hellhole, it kills their economic libido. They don't feel like becoming lawyers and accountants and making money, because why bother?
For one thing, no, that text is not saying that teachers should teach their black students that they live in a disadvantaged state. It's essentially insisting that white teachers be critical and conscientious of their own potential biases, which is a good practice for anyone. It's especially good for white teachers coming from middle or upper class backgrounds, teaching in areas of low socioeconomic status and or areas with high minority populations, to be aware of the cultural differences that likely exist between them and their students, then to work to understand those differences better. For the sake of brevity, though, I'll even grant you that this particular workshop was far more fringe than that, and that it was preaching that white teachers should hate themselves and their whiteness and teach black students that they're all victims. Even if that were the case, this was just a workshop at a conference. That's not a federal or state mandate or an actual school policy. We're halfway through your list, and you've yet to show us a single piece of curriculum or even a policy from a single school that actually mandates the liberal insanity that you promised. This is just one person presenting an opinion at a convention. There are all kinds of teaching techniques and philosophies discussed at all kinds of workshops at various conferences across the USA every year. Drawing this conclusion from its existence is like someone saying that all Americans are using 3D printers to create synthetic organs because you saw one American give a TED Talk on it.
Perspectives on Peace. This is a K through 5. Kindergarten to 5th grade program where these kids are shown a video about how shitty we are and how racist America is and how nothing's really changed since 1950. And if you're a black kid, people will still want to touch your hair every day on the way to school, which doesn't seem so bad to me, by the way. And German Shepherds are going to bite you. The cops are going to sick German Shepherds on you. Can you click on that one? Yeah, check out this video. Perspectives on Peace. So, that's good. I like kids. I don't like traffic jams. I don't like kids on their phone too much, but it's peaceful, I guess. Then there's children suffering. There's refugees. Black Lives Matter is here to help refugees and traffic jams and bring peace to the world. Because there's too much strife in the world. There's refugees and fires. And there's lying. People are lying. Stop bullying. Well, that's very controversial. What is all this hodgepodge? Peace begins with a smile, Mother Teresa. And then they have that black woman who's magic. She's one of the X-Men. And then a white cop touching a black, giving him a rose? And just a kid who's cold. I mean, I'm sorry, but this is made by lazy women. And they're doing a real half-assed job. You know the term motherhood statements? Well, it's become curriculum.
No, it fucking hasn't become curriculum. I couldn't even find the Perspectives on Peace K through 5 program website. Of course, you didn't link to any of your sources in the video, so I couldn't find it there. That means it's a pretty small program, possibly state-specific. Again, you seem tragically confused about the difference between a program existing, which schools have the ability to bring in or not bring in, and something being part of the curriculum. If it's a part of the state or local curriculum, it's a standard that must be taught, and even then, flexibility exists in how it is taught. The fact that a program exists does not make it the norm for schools across the United States. There also wasn't a single image in that clip that you showed that suggested any of the shit you said before you played it. It was mostly a bunch of peaceful pictures with a couple of shots of refugees and protests. Where was the message that America's a shitty place and how nothing's changed since the 50s and that black kids will have German shepherds sicked on them? You specifically said that's what the video taught kids, and there weren't images or words of any of that in the video.
Tight jeans do not equal rape. This was up in a guy's law school.
We don't need to draw this one out, Gavin. If you look at the bottom of the sign, you'll see that this was posted by a student member of Georgetown's chapter of Advocates Against Sexual Violence. It's promoting an event to raise awareness about sexual assault. Nobody's required to participate or attend the event. This isn't even one of those far-left professors calling all men rapists, which you could probably find if you looked hard enough into some women's studies professors across the country. But no, this is just a sign posted by a student group inviting people to an awareness event about sexual assault. It at no point accuses all men of being rapists, nor does it even target men specifically. It simply reminds college students that someone wearing attractive clothing is not an invitation for anyone to have sex with them. Now, what did you want the school to do? Was the school supposed to censor this group from putting up a true statement and inviting people to their event? Weren't you complaining earlier that a pro-life protest showing aborted fetuses to kids is fine, but now an innocuous sign against sexual assault on a college campus is a problem for you? Interesting.
I don't need my teachers protecting me from the state. I don't need them blocking me from signs. The Darla Moore School of Business will host a day of workshops to discuss diversity and inclusion, challenges and possibilities.
You then mention a professor who got fired for refusing to attend such an in-service and advocating for others to not attend either. And you run through the agenda. Refusing to attend mandated faculty events is grounds for termination at the collegiate level and at the public school level, where you claim it's nearly impossible to get fired. Now, whether or not this is something that fits the particular college is irrelevant. You concluded that schools won't shut up about diversity. A one-day workshop on a subject for one business school's faculty is not the same as schools in general refusing to shut up about something.
School presidents. Now, he's got all these different school presidents who, and I know I'm going to sound like a xenophobe here because my only beef is that they're all immigrants. But surely the numbers here, when 100% are Ahmed Absakar and Thu Mo and Stephen Barnabanamas, look at them all. We've got one in the hijab there. The black one is probably from America. Lin Dang wants Nai Lee. They're not even like Michelle Kwan. Like they don't even have American first names. Is that all of them? Now, I know this is sort of a contentious area of criticism to say, why aren't there any white students running or any Western students running? Because you know by the names that they're all fresh off the boat. And my answer to that is, when you get to the numbers that 100% of the principals, 100% of the kids running for school president are are immigrants, I don't know. Let me make it easier for you to understand. Remember Spike Lee? A few years ago, he said, I don't like people coming into Harlem. If you're going to come into Harlem, fine, but it gets to the point where the numbers get to be too much, and there's sort of a disrespect for the original ones there, and they want to impose their own world, and shit got to change. Well, fuck that. That's what Spike Lee said, and he got in trouble for it, but it was also considered really cool. It's cool to be against gentrification. Well, isn't this a form of gentrification? It's immigration gentrification.
No, you obtuse hypocrite. It's not immigration gentrification when none of the kids running for school president are white, or most of them have names that you assume made them new immigrants in this one school. You're the same person who rambles on about how racism isn't a problem in the United States because minorities have all the same legal opportunities as white people, and therefore there's no problem. Meanwhile, if at one school there are allegedly no white kids choosing to run for class president, you take issue with it. What exactly do you want this school to do? Do you want them to encourage white kids to run for president more, which you complain about schools doing for girls in STEM programs? Or do you want the school to discourage or exclude kids with foreign-sounding names from running? That would be objectively prejudiced and discriminatory. So, are you a hypocrite, or are you just wrong about racism not being a problem?
Whiteness, a definition. Now, this is a fun slide. where students have to sit in class. Even if I was black, I'd just be going, can we stop talking about white people all the time? God, this is boring. I didn't take this class. Whiteness is a descriptor or identifier for light-skinned people with Western features. It is an experience that involves unearned privileges due to racism. It is an ideology, a social structure, what does that say? Or worldview that is based on a system of exploitation based on the idea of white supremacy. Capital W. I don't know why that has a capital W. White. Now this, sorry to be sexist, but this is just some fat, lazy woman sitting down at a keyboard, practicing her graphic design, making things red, capitalizing white, and then she goes, I had a rough day today. I got a lot done. I did my whole teaching day until 3 o'clock, and then I stayed later and did one of my little whiteness slides. People don't appreciate me enough. I think I need a bigger pension.
Goodness, you've extrapolated a lot from a single slide with no evidence of its origin or context of its lesson. It's a picture of a slide that you can't even validate came from a real classroom. Again, this could be a slide from a student's presentation that the teacher later addressed, but we don't know. Even if it is a teacher's slide, it's not standard for any state curriculum, meaning you'd be dealing with either a district choice or a fringe teacher. On that note, it's absurd for you to look at one slide and assume it's the only thing a teacher did with his or her entire day. You honestly think a teacher just sits at a desk showing one PowerPoint slide that they made the previous afternoon, then goes home and complains about not getting paid enough? Go into a school sometime, Gavin. Observe a teacher for a day and rethink that claim. That would be like taking a picture of a construction worker dropping a tool and claiming that all construction workers do all day is stand around, drop tools, and get paid way too much for it. This is literally a snapshot of a moment, and you don't even know of what it's really a snapshot. You've already concluded that schools are liberal cesspools, and you're so eager to buy into anything that appears to confirm that you have no standards or specifications for the evidence that seems to point that way.
We need more queer families, and as Garrett pointed out, it's quite possible here that the family is the dad and his tiny lover, and the woman there is their lawyer who just got them off with community service. He only has to do 30 hours of community service because they're in love.
Yeah, I have no idea what that sign's about either, and I also disagree with the idea of suggesting that we make an effort to intentionally build more queer families. I don't think we even need to build more families to begin with, and a message of accepting queer families would be a lot better. However, you seem to ignore what happens to be a student name at the top left corner of the sign. Once again, it's more likely that you're not looking at a school-mandated push of the liberal agenda, but rather a piece of student work. It could even be a satirical poster or an example of irony or a sample of propaganda. This could just be a student's opinion who asked if the teacher would post it in the interest of free speech. You know, that thing that earlier you said teachers would be guilty of censorship if they rejected. Of course, we don't know what or where it really is because you don't bother to seek out details and post your sources. So just go with whatever confirms your predisposition and run with it. Lastly, you've again concluded from this one scrap of paper with unclear origins that they only like queer families. Even if this sign were posted as a school mandate of propaganda, it wouldn't represent the school system as a whole, and it doesn't speak out against non-queer families. Stop going to these absurd conclusions of absolutism from unclear, unverified anecdotal snapshots.
This kid who calls himself Amadeus sending me a poster that's in his school that says, nevertheless, she persisted. And it's Linda Sarsour, still on her high horse, bitching about how evil white people are and America should be ashamed.
I have to cut you off here before you rant about this woman because it entirely strays from your point. Your point, which you put in the text at the bottom of your own video for each of these segments, is they, schools, support Sharia. This was an event where a private liberal arts college hosted a Muslim woman. That does not mean that the school supports Sharia. It doesn't even mean that the school agrees with anything that she has to say or any of her ideologies. It just means that several student organizations that are listed at the top of that poster wanted to hear her speak and sponsored the event to do so. In this very video, you were appalled that a teacher didn't let a student write her pro-life propaganda on the school's sidewalk even though they provided a designated place where she could do it. That was a violation of her free speech according to you. Yet, for some reason, there's a problem with a private university hosting a Muslim speaker who speaks out against Donald Trump. This is an event that students and the public were free to attend or not attend. It wasn't forced on anyone. So explain to me why this isn't an example of free speech, but the student writing on the school sidewalk is.
And it's Trump University is a fraud. Now, Trump University was that controversy during the election. He never said it was like a university. It was a joke. No one thought they were going to a normal university, okay? It was like going to Cupcake U or something, or breakdancing university. It was a seminar you took for a few days. I can't remember how long it was, even if it was a year. It was a seminar you took to learn how to make money in real estate. It was like a Tony Robbins self-help thing. It was just a dumb little class to help people be savvy, but they turned that into university fraud, which is a total and utter farce. But anyway, this business school is using the given that Trump University was a fraud as a way to teach you about business.
The details of Trump University's legitimacy are irrelevant to your conclusion. You concluded again in your own text on your own video that they, schools, bring Trump into everything. If you're going to make a claim about that, you could at least bring up several examples of how Trump is shoehorned into multiple disciplines where he was irrelevant. Now, a single business school having one teacher that presents the Trump University issue as a fraud when it wasn't does not constitute evidence of your conclusion that schools in general bring Trump into everything. It doesn't even prove that this one teacher or this one school does it. If you insist on using these absolutes, I strongly suggest you narrow your topic down to something reasonable, like business schools or public high schools, or preferably something even smaller. Applying nearly any absolute to all schools from kindergarten through college, including specialty and private schools, is pretty absurd. That or you could just stop making these absolute claims based on single flimsy observation.
Why is it so important to squeeze Trump in there? Like that Berkeley professor that said that teaching is political. All of his examples were about fighting Trump.
It's because he's the current president, which makes him relevant to people's current political concerns and to people who are currently studying business or politics.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Who made the following statement? I don't think American elections should be bankrolled in America's most powerful, blah, blah. They should be decided by the American people. Barack Obama. That's question 6. Not Donald Trump. This is an advertising exam.
It was also not Hillary Clinton who was one of the choices, but I don't see you making it about her. Looks like you're the one focusing too much on Trump now.
How many voters in 2016 didn't even turn out to vote due to negative campaigning and political ads? And due to their general distaste for the candidates themselves. What percentage of U.S. voters didn't even bother to vote? You already asked that at the beginning of the question, by the way. Stop repeating yourself. And this is you apologizing for Hillary losing? What the hell has that got to do with advertising?
I'll grant that it does seem like this professor's liberal biases have bled through this exam. That being said, I don't understand why you can't see the relevance of the power of political advertisements to an advertising class.
Check out this kid, this woman, I guess, facing a Trump sign on her campus. She's not even mad, by the way. This is how they talk. This is her saying, I disagree. And she's using the tools that she learned in education. Dumping yogurt out on the ground, obviously, is a good way to express yourself.
This is why I don't believe in the legalization of marijuana. This is exactly why I don't believe.
Why don't you go up and shred him with your arguments? Oh, because you have none.
Right here on the Western Washington campus, she's going nuts.
She scribbled chalk on the ground.
With the Trump sign.
Borders, law, liberty. Those are all real things, lady. And here's my favorite part. Look at this. No, I'm good. No, I'm good. That's enough of that.
I will be the first to agree with you that this young lady appears to be a hypersensitive liberal who has failed to present a counter-protest with a reasonable and measured response, as she should. I'll even take one step closer to your side and argue that there are far too many liberals right now who would rather shriek about how evil people on the right are than actually bother to have a conversation with them, and that's a problem. What I fail to understand, once again, is the conclusion that you've drawn from this clip. What is your evidence that it was the schools this girl attended that caused her to behave this way? Would you say that the schools are simultaneously to blame for people her age who hurl hate speech at legal immigrants and spit genuinely racist venom at minorities? Are the schools to blame for that too? What about all the intelligent and reasonable young people on that very same college campus, like the girl who walked up in the clip to see if the Banshee needed help. Do the schools get credit for producing all of them too, or do they just get the blame for the existence of the looniest liberals for which you can find video footage? That seems mighty inconsistent and fallacious to me, Gavin. And if you need evidence that there are plenty of people on the right who are eager to swallow up any bullshit that seems to confirm their political opinions without investigating, you don't have to limit yourself to the mirror. Just look at the over 5,000 likes on this video that it got within 4 days of being uploaded, rather than asking any of the simple questions or making the points that I made here. I don't think I've been an unfair or unreasonable liberal in this video, but if I have, I'm sure my comment section will offer a bit more dissension than yours and let me know why. So good luck with reevaluating your positions on education, Gavin. It's been nice taking you to school.